Welcome back to the channel. I'm starting to think that every one of these videos is just going to be me describing the purpose of life and what it means to be a human in a different way, or hopefully a different way. I mean, I suppose I can't help but describe things a little differently every time. And I also want to make a point of not over preparing. Like when I feel inspired to make one of these, I'll just do it. I don't want to be like overly structured. So hopefully I can also be coherent and not too scattered at the same time. So this is good practice for me. So today, my angle on the purpose of life is going to be similar theme as the other videos, and essentially that I'm going to talk about energy work. But I have a bit of a metaphor that came to me yesterday, or I reminded myself of a metaphor yesterday that I think I put in my journal a long time ago, but kind of came up in a meditation I was having. And it gets me thinking about the human vessel, the human body, and what its purpose is, what our purpose is. So, all right, to describe the metaphor, I'll give you an example. When I was growing up, like as a young kid, where I live here, it's like rural New England. Technology takes a while to catch up with the rest of the world, or at least traditionally it has. And we still had like rabbit ears on the television sets. And, that would convert the TV airwaves into our television sets. And then at some point, they didn't work anymore. Everybody had to get something called a digital converter box. And it was the same type of thing, but it was just like this box instead, and it would receive the signal and transfer it into a digital signal of some kind, whatever. So the digital converter box is part of the metaphor here. A converter box of any kind in general is something that takes an input, whether it's a TV signal or whatever, and then does something to that input, and then puts an output into whatever system it's channeling into. So it converts, right? It converts the input into an output. And I think that's what human beings are. I think that's what the human body is. It's a converter box, but it's a consciousness converter box. So the question is, well, what is our input and what is our output, right? And I think this is really what, the alchemists talk about as far as transmutation. It's energy work. We are spiritual beings on one hand, but we are in physical matter. So the human body is like this bridge between the spirit world and the material world. And I think that we are the link between those two realms, essentially. And this notion of being a consciousness converter box is part of the process of turning lead into gold, as the alchemists say, or matter into spirit. And also, a conversion box can go two different directions, right? It can go from output to input or input to output. Like either way, it's also bringing spirit down to matter, bringing heaven to earth through us. So this can be kind of vague and metaphorical. So what I think that process is experienced as is energy work. So energy work is, our bodies are energy. Like you don't even have to be a spiritual person to think that energy exists. Energy isn't a woo-woo concept. Everything is energy of some kind, right? So if you look at like Chinese medicine, I've talked about the chakra systems and the chakra system on this channel and the energy meridians in our own body. like the Ayurvedic or Chinese medicine, Eastern systems, which I'm a big fan of. There's a lot of wisdom. Really, their entire approach to health, the health of the human body, is to have a holistic approach that tries to get those energy systems and channels flowing within the human body. And that's what health. Now, when you have stagnation, then that leads to ill health. Now, beyond just a physical perspective, of course, in those ancient, health systems incorporate not just physical well-being, but also emotional well-being, spiritual well-being, like the flow of the energy of your whole body. Emotions are energy, right? Everything is energy. So energy work, really, is just about channeling the energy within our bodies so that it flows and expresses in the most natural, efficient way. Now, excuse me, I like to use astrology to kind of give a roadmap in that process that I find very helpful. I believe our astrological charts are essentially a symbolic roadmap to our own energetic blueprint as individuals. So we can get a read into our innate foundational situation, energetically speaking, as we come into this world, as we're born, and the type of energetic systems, potential challenges and strengths to our energy flow within our body that we naturally have coming into the world, which can help us potentially, depending on how you use it, and give us insight into how to best go about our own process of inner alchemy, right? Of doing this energy work. But let me flip back to the original metaphor here, because I think I asked a question. Like, if we are consciousness converter boxes, in that conversion process that's going on is about energy work. What is the input and what is the output, right? So what is consciousness, right? If we're consciousness converter boxes, what is being converted? Consciousness is being converted. Some other terms for consciousness that I think are kind of parallel terms, you could say. Awareness. You could also say a frequency. I think consciousness is just awareness, but there are different frequencies of consciousness, meaning different levels of awareness, right? Like, I could be aware of my hand right now and I don't even know my foot exists, right? Like, that's possible. So now I could also be aware of my hand and foot. That's more awareness, right? That's greater awareness. So the greater the awareness, the higher the level of consciousness and the higher the frequency. Now, on the spectrum of consciousness, the highest frequency is God. The highest level of awareness is just total, unabridged, non-separate awareness of beingness and all that is and ever was, right? So that's like that direction. That's spirit, pure spirit. Now, the opposite direction, things get lowered. And what we experience in duality here in the physical world, in the material world, requires a lower level of consciousness to exist. So in a previous video, I talked about human beings being fractals of God. Like, we're like these little shards that are self-contained, and we're like mini versions of God, but we experience ourselves as being these separate entities, right? So our consciousness has these blinders, these limitations put on them. And that requires a lower level of consciousness, a lower vibration for the material world to take form. Because if it's too high, then the entire illusion is destroyed. Oh, there is no separateness, and we're all just like this one beingness. So it's necessary, if we're going to have the world of form, which arises out of the formless, we need to have our frequency at a lower level. Now, pure materiality, like how low can it go, right? If we start getting down into the hell realms where things are just frankly full of suffering and unpleasant, and even Earth, whatever exactly this realm is, Tolkien and The Lord of the Rings called it Middle Earth. So it seems to me like Earth, just mystically speaking, a lot of traditions and how it's presented to us in our daily life, is that Earth is like this neutral realm. It's this middle level where lower consciousness and higher consciousness can meet. However, from below, there are lower realms that can start dragging. I don't know if I want to get into this, but can start dragging that neutrality into the negative territory. So, this idea of spiritual warfare is kind of pertinent to this idea, thinking of Lord of the Rings and that view of what this world is. But the role of the human here is to confront that darkness, confront those negative energies, confront them and convert them, to alchemize them. So again, what is the input? If we're consciousness converter boxes here, we're taking in lower level, lower frequency, lower vibration consciousness through our earthly experience as human beings in this physical form. And those experiences, even the experience of just being in a human body, with its unique astrological kind of energetic setup, in navigating that, you're going to encounter resistance. You're going to encounter blocks, energy blocks. You're going to encounter pain and suffering, right? Like everything in the physical world has a high degree of challenge to it. Just by its nature, everything is passing away. All physicality is passing away. Every physical form that you have any attachment to or care for is going to go away if it hasn't already. It's in that process. So there's this difficulty and all of these challenges. And that's what the input is. And that input needs to be processed within us. And that's what you could call shadow work. It's what you could call alchemy, transmutation of these lower energies, these challenging emotions that we experience, these traumas that we experience. Like when we experience traumas in the world, as a childhood trauma usually results in an experience that's too much to process at the time. And it's a defense mechanism takes over in the body where that energy and that emotion is just suppressed, stored away, put in some filing cabinet to be dealt with later or never. And it's like this block, and it results in this block where that moment in time just stays. It doesn't move forward. So that's an input. That's a low level of consciousness that is put into us as humans. And our role is to actually navigate that energy, to thaw what is frozen energetically, to loosen the firm soil that's been impacted within us, to allow flow to move upwards so that that energy is converted into a higher frequency, to turn the matter into the spirit. And that's what energy work is. That's what inner shadow work is. All these terms is about confronting these lower consciousness, lower vibration. What it means is stuff we're not aware of about ourselves, knowing ourselves, knowing our blind spots, confronting emotions that maybe at one point were too much to handle, experiences that were too much to handle. But going in confronting those emotions, looking at them, bringing light to them, gently and with a loving intention, and with no rush. But that process allows that energy to rise within us. Now, the ability for this process, this conversion process of consciousness from the lower to the higher, I think it's an important distinction to point out that how much of it is our own doing, I think is up for question. And I think it's important to include a role of humility with understanding this process. That we are the vessel, we are the consciousness conversion box, right? That's our role. It's the spirit, it's the higher level awareness, it's God, whatever kind of spiritual tradition that you want to use, that we as vessels, as smaller, lower level fractals of God, allow the full power of God into ourselves to actually do the conversion of the lower realm into the higher realm, of the matter into the spirit. Because we, as humans, are flawed in the sense that we are physical beings. We are limited by our physical nature, by our animal nature. Our frequency is only so high. If it was too high, we would just like disintegrate and, I don't know, go back to the spiritual realm, and our bodies would turn back into clay and soil or whatever. So our role is to be grounded here and to take the input and to surrender to spirit, to allow the alchemy to take place and to actually transform, allow ourselves to be transformed into higher beings, eternal beings, right? That's what Christ talked about, eternal life. You know, if we stay, that our animal nature, the physical realm, our bodies, these are passing away. But if we surrender to the spirit from which all is created, we can I don't want to say achieve, but we can become eternal. And we are in our beingness and our connection to God, but we can maintain our uniqueness and our individuality eternally. But in order for that to occur, we need to surrender to this alchemical process, which is our purpose, to bring matter and allow it to be converted into spirit through us by surrendering to God, to the all-encompassing being that is all-powerful and has created everything that we know. So now that I've kind of laid out this metaphor, I'd like to kind of bring my astrological perspective into it as far as what it looks like. So what's our job here? How do we do this? Okay, I said we surrender, but that surrendering process is kind of in tandem. Like, we do have our own sense of free will and our own sense of doing things. So what is energy work? What is shadow work? What are these things? So going back to the chakra system and the energy meridians in the human body, we have the main 7, right? From the root chakra all the way to the crown chakra. And there are these main centers in the human form, in the human design. And each one represents a different aspect of our personality, of our makeup. So we're kind of divided, just like pure light is divided into the 7 colors of the rainbow. The human soul is divided up into 7 different chakras. Now, adding the astrological lens, I think there's a clear correlation between the 7 traditional planets and those 7 chakras. I also think it's helpful to thinking about these, these kind of angelic numbers, 7, 12, and how they, again, it's another kind of fractal thing where they manifest in different ways. You could think of the 7 musical notes, right? Or the chromatic 12-note scale. And when you think about color, but I'm a musician, I like thinking about sound. It makes sense to me in the sense that there are different octaves. So you could play G on one octave, and then you could go up another octave and up another octave. So it's the same note, like it's over here, right? Like there's a lower G, a higher G, all the strings are open, higher octave, same notes. So this process of energy work is about changing octaves. It's not about changing our essence, but it's about raising our essence into a higher version of itself. So again, this energy work and these different parts of ourselves, they all have a lower octave version of themselves, and they have a higher octave version of their expression. So the root chakra, for example, I associate that with the moon. And everybody has, if you're in your birth chart, your moon is in a different place, has a different expression depending on when you were born. So the moon is about nurturing oneself, being grounded in the earth, represents the mother and the womb, the moon, the womb. It's like we come into the earth. A lot of ancient traditions kind of associate the moon with how we actually come into the earth, the world, through the moon. So it's this very foundational, the root chakra. It's what gives us basic fundamental survival and sustenance. So it governs like instincts like just survival. Hunger I kind of associate with like just basic nourishment and survival. So when it's healthy, it's just finding balance and sustenance in life and safety, and it's finding those things. Now when if as a kid or as a child you weren't in it, maybe you grew up in a war zone or there was just instability in your home and that natural safety wasn't there, a sense of safety wasn't there from your parents or whatnot, that's where you can start developing these types of blocks where that lunar root chakra aspects of who you are was not met. And when there's an issue with the root chakra, there's a lack of groundedness, which can result in a lack of connection to your body, like your awareness, your level of consciousness is lower, right? You're just not attuned to your body. There might be whole areas of your body that just are numb when you try to get in touch with them. So there's a block, potentially. It'd be very common. So the way that can be nourished, so that's like the lower level aspect, is like anxiousness, physical illness in your body, right? Stagnation. Instincts like hunger can become like imbalanced, where you start overeating. So like you're emotionally eating, like you start eating things that aren't good for you, because on one level, oh, that's sweet, that tastes good, and because you're not really attuned and aware of your body on a deeper, more grounded level, you can't realize that refined sugar is actually not good for your body. At a higher level of awareness, going to McDonald's, actually, whatever surface level kind of instinctual gratification you get is outweighed by the more intuitive, deeper bodily attunement that tells you that this is actually poison, and that totally outweighs that. So any type of like addictive eating things that are bad, or overeating, your natural body awareness overrides those kind of surface level kind of instincts for survival. So that's like an example. Like the moon can be grounded and nourished, and when you can do that, then it lays the foundation for the rest of our life, like our physical sense of safety and security, once that's grounded in a reasonable way. It can become another way it can become out of whack is you can start like being kind of OCD about health or something. Like maybe I've certainly gone through this, where it's like, okay, I won't drink tap water anywhere. Like I have to have my own water, but the world that we're in is not perfect. Okay. And there's a level of compromise. And when like a true expression of a rooted, grounded, kind of lunar expression, there's a faith that the body is durable and intelligent, and we don't need perfect safety and perfect health and perfect environments. Like we can endure, and having a faith and a confidence in that. So I'm just kind of giving an example. Like that's the first area where you can experiment with, okay, like here's some of the challenges presented in this energy center that are at a lower input consciousness level. And through a process of inner work and energy work, we can release those energy blocks and start getting that energy center so that it's flowing and functional. And that raises the consciousness. That raises the consciousness level. So with each of these centers, maybe I'll do a briefer overview of just like a few things on each side, like the lower octave version and then the higher octave version of that chakra or that planet correlation. So then we get Mars. Mars is the second chakra, the sacral chakra. So this is life force energy. So, once you're born into the world, and, the first thing is the moon, and the root chakra is just getting groundedness, feeling safe, nourished, basic survival. Then that offers a foundation for life force energy to take action. So then we think of like the toddler phase, like they start going out and causing trouble, and they're learning to take action in the world, but also learning impulse control, which there's not very much impulse control. Like Mars has no impulse control, right? It's just raw, do, go, act, express. So in its higher level, it's like this, it's the battery, it's like the raw energy of our life. And on a higher level, that kind of raw energy can be expressed creatively into art, inspiration, anything, like literally it's the raw energy that then eventually goes through the rest of our energy centers, and we can manifest our dreams into the world. Now, on a lower instinctual level, it's like our animal instincts to act, to, again, to survive, to procreate, like our sexual instinct. Now, on a lower level, the sexual instinct is lust, the wanting to just possess, take. On the higher, it's love, right? So it's, again, like this lower octave. How do we raise it into the higher octave? And yeah, the second chakra is a tough one, because we can get into this dualistic, like, okay, Mars is out of control, we need to like suppress it. This is something I've certainly, in my own process, continue to balance and investigate. Is this, okay, well, then you don't have any energy for your life. You've shut out your life force. So you can't do that. You need to actually go into it, confront it in balanced ways, face it in balanced ways, and learn to channel the energy, learn to alchemize the energy into higher levels. And the way you do that is, it can sound complicated with all this mystical terminology, but it's just awareness. It's literally just feeling your feelings. Like, all this stuff can get very heady, theological, whatever. But at the end of the day, that's what it is. It's awareness, bringing attention and awareness to the energies that you experience in your own body. And that process of expanding awareness allows the octave to shift in each of these energy centers, in each of these expressions. So that's kind of Mars. And then we move up to solar plexus, right? The sun, solar. This is our ego. This is like our personality. This is how we shine in the world, how our willingness on the higher octave to actually step into our unique gifts, to go out, step into the spotlight, and inspire others, and just also have the vulnerability and courage, right? The lion, the sun, the courage to actually express our uniqueness, whatever that is, and have faith that it has a purpose in this overall scheme of life. On the other side, it's that the ego can become insecure, and it can become inflated, especially when those other energy centers underneath that have to do with survival and security. If they aren't met, then the ego is all about survival and maintaining its own identity and competing with others and taking the spotlight for itself, and narcissism and all of these kind of wounded ego manifestations, which I'm sure we can easily think of some examples on the world stage that match that, unfortunately. But it's all part of Middle Earth here. We're all in this process together. So, yeah, the higher octave and lower octave of the sun and the ego, the heart and Venus, the center of love and openness and beauty and connection. I've been thinking that the heart chakra is really it's like our core. It's the center of, it's the seat of the soul, is the heart. I think in the Hindu tradition, like, the spark of God is in our heart. And it's almost as if all of the other energy centers, like when you think of those like pictures of the aura, the magnetic field, electromagnetic field that surrounds our bodies, like the heart is the center. It's literally the center that is emanating everything. It's like this torus field that we're in. So it's almost as if everything else revolves around the heart in many ways. So when the heart is open, that's just pure light and pure love. Now, the heart by itself is love. The more wisdom, truth, like kind of, the heart can be blind, right? The heart, in this world, we're not in the spirit realm where everything is just pure. We're in kind of a battlefield between the lower realm and the higher realm, and the heart needs protection. The heart needs to be guarded. So again, it can go too far where we close the heart off because too much openness, too much vulnerability is too sensitive. But if we close the heart off, then we lose all of the power and the whole point of life. So the energy work of the heart space is learning how to open our hearts while also setting boundaries. Now, Venus, who I associate with the heart chakra, is also, about beauty and all of these things. The heart, left to its own devices or out of balance, can become a little too idealistic and like I heard the term recently, like toxic positivity, right? Like where everything is just positive. We are not going to deal with anything negative because that doesn't exist, right? That type of thing can, if the heart's not balanced and expressed in the right way, like it can get a little too out of control. Also, like just wanting beauty and everything and becoming maybe a little too much into luxury and that type of thing. Venus is associated with that. But again, the higher octave of the heart in an open heart is just pure love. And that's kind of the point of life. So it's almost as if everything else revolves around the heart. Now, then we go into the fifth chakra and Mercury, and that's where we get more into where the heart is love. Mercury starts getting to the mind, which has to do with truth, right? Like in this world, like thought, truth, understanding, being able to tell fact from fiction, being able to be clear and concise, clarity as far as how we communicate. Now, Mercury can also get into analysis paralysis, where we can talk all day about our dreams and our desires and our plans and not actually do anything about it, right? We can make our plans and we can just get paralyzed in that space. Even like making these videos, I associate a lot with Mercury. I have Mercury in my first house, and I love discussing and finding clarity and communicating and connecting in a mercurial way. And then, of course, being able to express your heart, like having a good relationship between Mercury and Venus is very important. So there's that bridge. And of course, all these energy centers are holistically connected. So again, that's one more area. The higher octave of Mercury, clarity, precision, being able to express and articulate truth. The lower can be like this analysis paralysis or justifying. I mean, you can justify anything you want through the right logical argument, even whether it's true or not. So lower to higher, that's the type of work that Mercury is involved in. Then the third eye is Jupiter. This is about manifesting our dreams. This is wisdom. This is the seed of wisdom. This is where we have the ability to meet the higher infinite beingness from which we all stem from, where it meets our individual personal self, and where we can actually welcome in the higher spirit into ourselves. Which again, as I said at the beginning, it's God, it's the Holy Spirit, right? Catholics talk about theosis, this process of surrendering to the spirit to actually allow this inner transformative process to occur. Is the lower octave consciousness converted into the higher octave consciousness, bringing the matter into the spirit. So, yeah, Jupiter is about abundance. Jupiter is about manifesting our dreams in our highest purpose, and downloading and having attunement with the wisdom which guides us in our life and allows us to fulfill our purpose. Now, on the lower octave, I can think about some of the problems with like the personal growth developmental space that I've seen online, where it can be a little too self-centered, where it's all about like, go manifest your dream life and your mansion and your Lamborghini and your trophy wife and all of this kind of nonsense, where it just becomes like, yeah, I can manifest my own life and not serve anybody but my own self, right? So there's immense power in this energy center, because you're literally harnessing pure beingness and pure wisdom. But if that's used, that could be used for selfish purposes, for the dark side, right? Like this consciousness converter box can go either way. But ultimately, yeah, that's our seat of wisdom. And then our crown chakra, Saturn. Saturn is the disciplinarian, like this father figure. And really what the way I think about the crown chakra in general is, when is a king given a crown? When is a queen given her crown? When they've earned it. When they've become, you don't become the monarch when you're given the crown. You become the monarch and then the crown is given to you. So another way of saying, if you've actually done the work to balance and find flow within the rest of these areas of your life, these different energetic aspects, then you will be crowned. Saturn will recognize that. But in the meantime, Saturn is the one that's saying, you're not there yet. That's not right. You know better. That's your lower animal impulse. Don't do that, right? And where it can become out of whack is it can be like this demanding father figure who is just constantly criticizing you and pointing out your weaknesses. And if it's imbalanced, it can become discouraging. You can become depressing. It's like this overwhelming just harshness to Saturn. And Saturn is also demanding. Saturn is about structure and has this connection to the material world. It's the bridge between the spirit realm and the physical realm. So Saturn's like, hey, you need to actually take this spiritual wisdom. You need to take these dreams and ground it into reality. You need to actually follow through. You need to do the work. You need to actually materialize your highest spiritual divine purpose. And Saturn will hold you accountable to that. And you won't feel fulfilled until you pursue that path. And I don't want to say like there is an end point to this process. I'm not one to say. I think it's an eternal process, and it's about being on the path rather than having we're imperfect human beings. We're part animal, we're part spirit, eternal souls, and we're just in this flux. We're in Middle Earth here. So this entire process is all right. So I ran out of storage on my phone. This is probably the longest video that I've done, so thanks for watching this far. I'm just going to wrap up because I don't know how much storage I have left even now. So yeah, I felt inspired to share this little metaphor, today's explanation of what the purpose of life is. We're alchemical converter boxes of consciousness, and I thought that was a cool thought. So hopefully you got something out of it. I'll catch you in the next one.